You are listening to the Dadpod. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. Join me as I try my best to navigate fatherhood for the first time. Along the way, I'll share stories of what's happening in my journey, as well as some stories from other dads who stop by the show from time to time. Fatherhood is an adventure, so let's dive right in. Everybody, how we doing? Welcome to the next edition of the Dad Pod. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. A very early Merry Christmas to you. We're only 4 days away from Christmas. It's kind of crazy to think that. I felt like Thanksgiving was just here, and now all of a sudden Christmas is just right around the corner. Have you done your holiday shopping? I was going to say your Thanksgiving shopping. Have you done your Christmas shopping yet? I've done most of mine. I still have a little bit left to finish for my wife and son, but I'll talk about Christmas with a newborn a little bit later on in the show. Special thanks to all of you that tuned in to the first edition of the show. You can go and find that episode and all future episodes by going to Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com, and you can also find it on iTunes now also. Very nice and simple there for you. Go and subscribe, download, review, share with your friends, all that great stuff. So special thanks to all of you that took the time to help listen and promote as well, too. I had a couple of people reach out to me personally thanking me for it, and also just being open and honest about some of the things that happen in fatherhood. So the first episode is a little bit more long-winded than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to give you an adequate backstory of who I am, my wife, and our story a little bit, and about Beckham, of course, as well. So I am a father. I'm a father of a 1-month-old son, Beckham. He's fantastic, a great little guy, and I'm going to give you some updates about him and just some general things to talk about as well on the show. Quick reminder, of course, though, for you, that you can also go and check out the Dad Pod on Facebook. Go and like the Dad Pod. It's all caps, D-A-D, and then lowercase P-O-D. You can also email me as well, baxterc20@gmail.com, if you have any thoughts, comments, or questions about anything we do on the show. Today's title of the show is Diapers, Christmas, and Grandpa. Sometimes those things all go hand in hand just for Grandpa, but that's not actually what today is all about. My grandpa's not in a diaper to my knowledge, but we're going to be talking a little bit about changing diapers, Christmas for a newborn. We also teased a brief bit on Facebook as well about shower time. We'll talk about that. And then our first show guest in history will be my grandpa, Merle. He's going to stop by the show to share his experiences of his 50 years worth of being a father. So it's going to be pretty crazy to hear his thoughts and comments about what it takes to be a father, and what it takes to be a father for 2 boys as well, too. So we'll get his experiences and thoughts and some great stories from him in just a little bit. So let's dive right in. I'm going to try to give a couple of pieces of advice, couple of just thoughts in general about a couple of topics before we get into each interview. So first thing I want to talk about is diapers. Diapers might be a scary thing for some of you, especially you first-time dads, that some of you, in all honesty, have just never changed a diaper. That's just the honest truth about it. I have been fortunate enough to have been changing diapers since I was about 12. I've got 2 little brothers, and when my second brother, or my first brother, I guess, was born, Seth, I started to learn how to change diapers when I was only 12 and 13 years old, so that really kind of helped prepare the way for me going forward. And then when my second brother was born, Antonio, I was full-fledged into the diaper mode at that point, because I was a little bit older at that point. And it can be terrifying, honestly. I had a friend that came to visit over a couple of weeks ago, and he had never changed a diaper before. This guy's almost 25 years old. Well, he's a single guy, so obviously he's never really been put in a position. He doesn't have any younger siblings either, and just has never really done it before. So my wife and he and I all kind of like walked through the situation with him of what to do. But isn't it funny, though, like something as some people might say as simple as changing a diaper can be so terrifying for some people? I mean, do you remember the first time you changed your child's diaper? I remember changing Beckham's diaper for the first time in the hospital, and I hadn't changed a diaper in probably a couple of years, but like it kind of really just kind of comes back to you. It's almost like riding a bicycle. I know that might seem kind of odd, riding a bicycle and changing a diaper, but it's really similar. You almost don't even have to look at a point. You just, okay, pick the butt up, diaper under there, flap over, strap, boom, done, on our way. Simple as that. Some people might think it's that simple. Some people are trying to write algorithms and look at the periodic table just to figure out how to change a diaper. probably not. I hope you're not. That's, like I said, it's not that complicated in all honesty. But if you're like me and you have a son, you know that there's extra complications, or not necessarily complications, but extra hurdles to go over when you're trying to change a diaper, of course. So, you've obviously got to take care of making sure that you're not getting shot at while you are, leaving everything exposed. So make sure you move swiftly when you take off the diaper for the first time, quick little wipe and then get the new diaper up and over and on. Even though if you don't necessarily apply the adhesive little, I don't know what they're really called, the straps, the patches, exactly what they are. If you don't do that immediately, just try to get that cover up and over really fast, because both my wife and I have already had experiences where we've either gotten peed or pooped on, and it's not fun. It's some people might call it a laughable moment. You'd be like, you got peed on. Other times you're wearing nice clothes, you have a business meeting you have to get to, or you just decided to finally do your hair and makeup for the first time since your child has been born. And then you have pee and poop, and you're like, oh, son of a gun. Now I got to go shower again really fast, and it just becomes a hassle. So make sure you are as swift as possible, swift and accurate as possible. It might sound silly, but it's really true. You want to get in, get out as fast as you can. It's almost like for those of you that are sports fans, it's kind of like a NASCAR pit stop. You get the tires in and off really fast. Basically what it comes to changing a diaper. Just quick, efficient, boom, bam, send them back on their way. They fly back out on the track and everybody's healthy. So definitely something to keep in mind. It's always good to practice as well too. If you are becoming a first-time dad, it might seem a little odd, but maybe practice. Buy a couple of diapers, practice on a teddy bear if you've got one, or if your wife has an old doll or something laying around the house, or if you've been given gifts for the baby, maybe practice a couple of times. And obviously it won't be like playing with live ammo like it is when you've got the real thing happening, but to get the general pattern down of what you have to do, it might not be the worst idea. One other thing that might help you and save you, your not only your health but your nose as a whole, would be buying something called a diaper genie. It helps keep all of your poopy diapers and pee diapers in this container basically, and it suppresses the smell, so that way you don't stink up your entire house, and every time you go to try to change your son or daughter's diaper in their room, you don't pass out from the smell basically, because it allows you to store up probably I think like 20 or 30 diapers at a time before you have to pull it out, tie it up, and put a new one in. Definitely worth the investment. We have a lower grade diaper genie, but it still does the job. You don't even really know that you've got a whole wad of stinky diapers inside the genie. I know Beckham's only a month old, so obviously he's not laying too many bombs right now, but he's had a couple of stinky ones so far. So definitely worth the investment. One other thing I would recommend also buying is a wipe warmer as well. Go and buy a wipe warmer. They help, as simple as it sounds, keep the wipes warm, because if you're like myself and you live in Wisconsin and you have to go and change a diaper in the middle of December at 3 a.m, normal wipes are a little cold, just because we turn the heat off usually at night in our house to save money and just cuddle under the blankets. But the wipe warmer is still going, so that way you have a nice warm wipe on your baby's butt at 3 a.m. if they're still partially asleep. Imagine taking a nice cold wipe and applying it onto their butt. You're going to freak them out. They're going to wake up. They're going to be mad. Then it just kind of all spirals out from there. You start drinking again and it just gets bad. No, I don't. Anyway. So a wipe warmer, diaper genie, if you are still looking for last minute holiday gifts for your significant other, if you're, go and do that. Or if you know people that are expecting, maybe not the worst idea in all honesty. We've got both of those and we are thrilled to have both of them, honestly. Speaking of Christmas, this has been a question that my wife and I have been chatting about recently. What do you get for us, a 1-month-old baby for Christmas? Do you get them anything? They're not going to remember it. Do you bother getting them toys or stuffed animals or books? Because frankly, for the first maybe 3 or 4 years, a lot of kids, a lot of people in general just don't really have much of a memory of their first presents. I've gotten a ton of presents over the years, and I look back at old pictures and I'm like, I don't even remember getting that, honestly. And at the time, I'm sure I was super excited and super jazzed. I'm not saying don't get your kids anything for Christmas. Definitely get them something if they, deserve it, of course. Don't just get them something to get them something. But do you get a 1-month-old a lot of gifts? We had our family Christmas this last weekend with some of my side of the family, and Beckham got a couple of gifts, but they were all, for the most part, I would say, needs. He got a couple. I think he got a book, which was great. He got a couple of outfits for him when he's 3 to 6 months. So that's perfect right now. He's got plenty of clothes right now that he is probably never going to wear, just because he's got so many newborn and 0 to 3 month clothes. So that's always something that is important. One thing that I thought was really good, though, was baby's first Christmas ornament. We got a little ornament, I think that says Little Green Bay Packers fan, since we are Packer fans. Woo woo, go Packers! We got a little ornament. It's a little Green Bay Packers fan on it. So we hung it on our tree, which I think is really cute. And things like that, I think, are great to remind yourself. Or sometimes parents will take pictures of their kids and then put them in a little frame and hang that up as an ornament. Baby's first Christmas. Or, sometimes they'll do like little footprints or handprints. That stuff is really cute. But don't spend a ton of money on your newborn right away for Christmas. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, in all honesty, in my opinion. Obviously, you might have other opinions. And then you get the barrage, which we have already, of stuffed animals. I got a lot of stuffed animals when I was a kid. I definitely remember having a lot of stuffed animals. But for those that know me, I only have one that I still actually have. I have my teddy bear called Teddy, Theodore, long name, Teddy for short. Teddy I've had since before I was born. My mom bought him a couple months before I was born. Had him ever since. I am going to be 25 next month, so that can kind of tell you how long I've had Teddy. I sometimes people say, well, the kid's got to figure out what animals he's going to like. Maybe he's going to love his stuffed animals. Maybe he won't. For boys, I feel like they don't really care too much about the stuffed animals. And as a parent, you're like, really? Another stuffed animal? And sometimes you get cute ones that sing or do great things. And those are kind of cool. But I don't think you need 14 teddy bears. I don't think you need 16 stuffed penguins and, 42 tigers and all that stuff. It just gets excessive, and it's more so annoying for the parents who receive the gifts. It's like, okay, thanks for the stuffed animal again. Let's go make another Goodwill run. Basically what it comes down to. So just be careful with that. Don't overdo it when it comes to stuffed animals. Ornaments, definitely a plus at the Christmas time. I think is a great move for it. But, maybe books that you can read with the kid later on in life, or you read before bedtime. We read books with Beckham before he goes to bed as well most nights. So those are things that I definitely recommend. One other thing that I've actually been talking to other dads about and just hearing in general from people before we get to our interview is shower versus bath time. Some folks, prefer to shower with their kids. Others prefer to just do the old bath and go for it. Let's be honest, it's terrifying the first time you have to strip your kid down and give them a bath or a shower, because people freak out and say, oh, what if my son gets water or my daughter gets water in their eyes or in their throat? Are they going to choke? Is it going to be... The great part about it is that babies have these built-in mechanisms for the first couple of months that they're still so used to being encased in amniotic fluid that anytime water comes around them, they close their eyes, they close their mouth naturally, and they just can completely fend off anything like that comes at them. So you don't have to worry about that too much. Obviously, don't overdo it. Don't push the grain, obviously. Don't be that guy. But you don't have to worry too much about that. I personally like to shower with Beckham. I like the bonding time with that. You hear a lot about, for new moms, the skin on skin with the baby right away. For dads, we don't get to do that a whole lot, and some dads do prefer to do that, of course, but I think it's a more special thing for the mom and the baby to be able to do right away, just because of going from feeding to then skin on skin, I think is a really powerful thing. But for dads, we don't get to do that very often. So I utilize my skin on skin time with Beckham when I shower with him. So he is still just a little peanut. He's about 21 inches long now, 8 pounds, 13 ounces as of the doctor's appointment yesterday. So I'm able to basically hold him in one of my hands, because I've got a pretty good sized hand. I can hold him in one hand, because he scrunches up like a little tiny little frog basically on my chest. I hold him with one hand, and then I have the soap with the rag in another hand, and then kind of go that way with him. From everything I've seen, Beckham loves showers. He's not a huge bath fan, and I know every parent is different, of course, and sometimes you do the bath in the sink, sometimes you do, the bathtub inside the bathtub, basically. Everyone's different, so obviously, listen to your child, try both. I highly recommend the shower, in my personal opinion, but it's not for everybody. It's a terrifying thing at times, because what if you get them too slippery? What if they slip out of your hands? Then it just gets messy after that. So be smart about the option that you go with in that regards, and think about it. You never really know what your kid's going to do, and it's good to be able to have both in your arsenal if they decide to do both. All right, let's move along to our interview. I had the first opportunity to have an interview on the Dadpod, and I got the opportunity to welcome my grandpa, a man that I respect deeply and love very much, and who's been basically like a second father to me my entire life. And he had some great things to say about his life as a whole and the communication and things that he has with his wife. I start by asking my grandpa his thoughts about the first time he found out that his wife was pregnant and all the emotion that comes with it. Take a listen.
Well, first of all, our first one was really well planned. We really wanted to have a child. I got to say, our second one was a surprise blessing.
Ah, okay.
But the first one was very well planned, so we were excited about it.
Okay.
We were really looking forward to it, and you just get really excited about having a child, and there he was, a son who you know yourself. They look perfect when you see them.
Mm-hmm. How did you come up with the name?
I believe my wife came up with that name.
Okay.
One of the things we kind of wanted to do with both of our sons is have names that weren't easily shortened to something else. So, of course, then you find out people add to short names because both of our sons have one-syllable names.
Sure. Yep. Grant and Kurt.
Right.
So then would people go, what would they do for Grant? I know people would call my dad Curdy. I don't know what they would do for Grant.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they did with Grant. I don't think I heard people do so much with his name, but Kurt was Kurt and Curtsy. And, I've heard a couple of those over the years with that. It's always interesting, too, when you become a first-time dad, there's obviously a lot of emotion that goes with it. Was the pregnancy overall pretty routine, I guess, as routine as pregnancies can go? Well, being for the first time, who knows?
Yeah, true. That is very true.
But I think overall it went fairly smoothly. She had some morning sickness for a while, but overall I think it went quite smoothly. There was no big dramatic moments, I guess you would say.
Yeah, for me, I know that the first time that I got to hold my son in my hands, there was kind of that, it's almost like that out-of-body experience, at least, where you're kind of looking at yourself holding your first child, and you're like, is this actually happening? Did that happen for you, too, or was it just kind of a...
Well, back when we had our kids, it was kind of, here's your baby. And the first time I saw Grant, they were bringing my wife out, and he was on the bed with her.
Okay.
And they said, here's your son. And from there, they would take them to the nursery.
Okay.
You did not get to hold them. You did not really do anything with them except look at them through a glass window until you took them home.
Wow. Yeah. For us, it was a whole different experience. They did every single thing in the room, the delivery, the labor, the aftercare. It was all done in the exact same room, and they just kind of shuffled nurses and doctors and equipment in and out, basically.
Well, back in our days, there was a room for the birth to take place. Mm-hmm. Fathers were not invited.
Oh.
Fathers had a waiting room.
And this was back in the early 60s.
Right.
Correct, yes.
Yes, there was a waiting room for the father. And, I was in there, and we had gone in about 11 o'clock at night, so this was early morning hours. I'd gotten pretty sleepy. I think I probably had fallen asleep sitting there waiting, and somebody came in and finally said, Mr. Colburn. And I remember I jumped up, it's happening. And they said, you have a son. So it was all done already.
Kind of anticlimactic.
Well,
basically.
They didn't even come and wake you up until after the whole thing was done.
Sure. So. Yeah, well, for me, I was literally a part of the entire process. The nurse had one leg, I had the other leg, and they're like, here we go. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm staying. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that kind of changes, though.
Oh,
but
yeah,
do you, from a personal perspective, are you okay that you kind of missed out on all the chaos that took place, I guess, inside?
Well, I don't think there was even any question about it at that time.
Sure.
That's the way everybody did it. I mean, that was just a part of the procedure that the father went and waited in the father's waiting room. And, the doctors didn't explain an awful lot back in those days either. It was just like, well, you're pregnant and I will take care of you.
Seems pretty vague, but
yeah, well,
pretty to the point as well.
That was basically what you got,
Did you? I mean, you guys didn't have ultrasound back then either.
No.
So did you have to go for monthly checkups or anything to make sure that the baby was developing? I guess.
Yeah, she went in regularly. I don't remember just what the interval would have been, but
Sure.
she went in very regularly, and it was a very nice doctor that we had, and it was kind of a traumatic birth in some ways. He was both upside down and backwards.
Oh, my gosh.
I guess you call it breech, but he was also upside down.
That explains a little bit about his personality, for what I know of him, of course. But
one of the interesting things, I think, is that because he came out that way, his head was not misshapen as some babies are because they come out head first and the squeezing and everything. Mm-hmm. So his head was very naturally shaped. And
That's good.
I remember that. He was a very good-looking little baby. At least I thought so.
Yeah. Was there a lot of difference at all between your first son and your second son at all in terms of the birthing process? And it was a couple of years later, obviously.
It was basically the same thing. And, of course, we had a very young son. We had a son that was about, 18 months old. And one of the things I remember about that is that, she was in the hospital for, 5 days probably, and I had a summer job. This was during the summer, and so we had a woman that I taught with who was taking care of our son Grant each day, and it was very nice of her, and he was having a good time there. But then when I went to pick my wife up and our son Kurt, they wouldn't let Grant go in the room to get her. He had to stay out in the waiting room.
So they just left
by
an 18-month-old
himself. He's 18 months old.
himself.
Yeah, well, because I had to go in and help her carry stuff out, So here we are. We're coming down the hall, and here comes this little year-and-a-half-old boy chugging down the hall, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." And he had missed Mommy, of course, and got to see her finally. And he wasn't having any of this waiting in the waiting room. He was out there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Nowadays, if you would leave an 18-month-old child in a waiting room, you would, security would be called, and there'd be all kinds of things. Be like, "Excuse me, you can't be leaving your child."
Well,
here.
There were nurses, there were people there, and they knew that the baby was there. And I'm sure if he had gotten, running, trying to get outside or anything, there would have been somebody who would have taken care of it.
Sure.
But it was the way things were done back in those days. You just, and you accepted it because that was the way everybody did it.
Yes, yeah. So, throughout the whole process, was there ever a time that you were hopeful for a daughter at all through either of the two pregnancies?
Oh, I guess probably. Although I think we were happy to have whatever. And you didn't know, of course, because there was an ultrasound. It was all a surprise. Yeah. It was, here we are. And so we always had a girl's name picked out as well as a boy's name, but
what were those names? Do you remember the names that you had picked out?
Oh, let's see. I think when Grant was born, it would have been Michelle.
Okay, Michelle.
And when Kurt was born, we had shortened it to Shelley.
Oh, okay. So you're trying. You're like, if we keep shortening, maybe we'll keep trying to hope for the best.
Well, you know how it is with names sometimes. There's a name you really like. And then you meet somebody with that name that you really don't particularly like, and all of a sudden, nope, cross that name off the list.
Oh, yeah. I totally
kind of think that's what happened with Michelle.
Okay. And you and your wife are teachers, too, so I'm sure you had those students that you were meeting along the way that you're like, I liked you, or nope, didn't like that kid, never going to name my son that, or my daughter that.
Actually, I was the only teacher at the time.
Okay.
Interesting, back in those days, a woman married just basically could not get a teaching job.
Really?
Well, you might get pregnant.
Oh, of course. And
of course, in those days, if you got pregnant, they would maybe let you stay for a month or two at the most, and then you had to get out because, the kids can't see a pregnant woman in classroom.
Oh, my. Okay. That makes sense, yeah.
Well, sure. They could see their mother at home and their aunts and their cousins.
Was it through all grade levels, or was it just like the elementary?
Anything in school teaching.
Really?
Yeah, They just basically didn't hire married women.
Wow.
At least young married women.
Sure.
Maybe if they were in their 40s or something, then they would
makes sense.
Have them. So
that's interesting. Well, you've had obviously the opportunity to then raise two sons, and obviously they're both still doing they're both married now and adults and living their lives accordingly. Obviously, I'm here because one of them got married and had a child, of course. Yay! But those 18 years from the time that you had them to the time that they left to go to college. Obviously, a lot of experiences took place, good, bad, or otherwise. How, I guess, and I mean, obviously I don't expect you to give me all of your secrets about how you coped with two boys being only about 2 years apart, right?
Right, a year and a half, yeah.
So, I guess, I mean, just generally, though, I mean, what were some of the things that you and your wife tried to do to keep a handle on the boys, but to also raise them in the way you wanted them to be raised?
Well, I think a lot of times it was more that we let them know what we expected.
Okay.
I don't think it was so much that we had to, clamp down so much as just these are the things that we expect, and these are the things that we think are okay for you to do, and these are the things that we don't feel is okay for you to do. Just as an example, when I think our older son Grant was about in 8th grade, one of his friends came over and said, well, let's go downtown. We'll just go down and hang out a while. And he came down and asked me if he could go. And I just said, I didn't say he couldn't go. I said, Grant, we don't want you to just go out and just hang around.
Of course.
If you've got a reason to go downtown, that's fine. And
you lived in a small town at that point. But
I think he accepted the fact that I didn't say, no, you cannot.
Okay.
But he also, I felt in that case, I think he was almost glad that I said it, because I don't think he really wanted to do it himself. But how do you tell your friend you don't want to? So it's more like, well, my dad says, and I think he was happier that. So I guess that's kind of the way we did things most of the time.
And that's definitely one of the things that my wife and I have talked about a lot too. When we talk about future times where our kids are old enough to be doing things with parents, providing those safeties almost, where it's like, if they're in an uncomfortable situation, they don't want to say no directly. It's like, well, I don't think my parents would want me to, or you make that phone call and say, well, talk to my mom and she said she'd rather me not, and it's a little bit more acceptable, I guess. Yep. But obviously you didn't no cell phones at that point, but still obviously a lot of things were taking place.
Yeah. And I think kids need somebody that can kind of blame for not being able to do certain things. It's like, well, my dad won't let me. And like I say, a lot of times I think the kids are just as happy not to be able to. But if you said yes, they would go ahead and do it, because who's going to say no to their friend if their parents don't say no? So,
exactly. One of the last things I guess I want to talk about too is, since you've been married to your wife for over 50 years, so number one, you must be doing something right. So that's obviously, congratulations for that. Obviously,
I must have good taste.
You must have good taste, of course. You've got quite the catch. But how was the communication, the chemistry, parenting, not only for the first time but for the second time as well too, with your wife? Because obviously you'd been married. How long were you guys married before you had your first child?
About 3 years.
Okay, so you had a couple of years under your belt to get the whole marriage thing under. But then obviously, as soon as you throw kids into the mix, that just changes everything. But were there moments that were more difficult than others, or did you guys just kind of seem to be pretty much?
I don't really think we had problems with adjusting to having kids. We weren't big on partying or any of that type of thing anyway. I mean, obviously went out the two of us more often before we had kids than after you have kids, but
priorities
we weren't, and I was teaching, and she was, until she had our first child, she was working in an office, but we weren't making a lot of money, so there wasn't an awful lot that we had money to do. So pretty much we were home most of the time. Television or listening to music were our outlets basically most of the time.
That's so interesting too, just the change of culture, I guess, thinking about what you guys would do back in the day to what my wife and I do nowadays, or you hear about other couples throughout the years too, that and my wife and I are the same way. We're not big partiers. We enjoy being around groups of people or even hosting more than we do anything. But yeah, it's like your life changes completely when you have a child. Your priorities are completely different, and that was the one thing my wife and I talk about all the time. It's like we literally have to not think about ourselves, but think about somebody else for the rest of their life, and make sure and always really know where they are at some point. Especially for the first 18 years.
And in some ways, even though our boys are now 50 and 49, they're still your kids.
They are.
And your grandkids are still that little boy quite often.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's how it is. And you'll find the same thing, that they're adult. You've got to step out of their, trying to run their life, so to speak. But by the same token, you never lose that worry sometimes about what's going on, and hoping for the best for them, and hoping that they are happy and productive. So,
how fast does it go by?
Too fast.
Too fast?
Yeah.
I've already...
I tell you, I think probably while our boys were in up through college and even after college, if they were involved, because they were both involved in music a lot, if there was anything that they were doing, we were there. Whether it was a concert, we're looking at, got a 50-year-old son that's playing in a band that's doing a, oh Lord, who's the one that did the Pink?
Oh, Pink Floyd or something?
Pink Floyd, yeah. Well, they're doing it's a tribute band, and they're going to be in Green Bay in, March or something. We're talking about getting tickets already.
Okay.
Not that Pink Floyd is something that I just say, I got to hear it.
Of course.
Our son is in it.
Yeah.
Or your dad, our younger son, is in a band. We've heard his band almost as many times as they've played out, probably.
Wow.
If they're playing, if we can, we go hear him. We just feel like we need to support what they're doing. So,
what's the last thing I'm going to ask you before I let you go? What's one thing or several things that you hope through your parenting that you hope carried through to your kids, or you've seen? That's like you look from the outside, going, "Oh, they got that from me."
Well, you hope they get it from you. I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess I look back at watching your dad spending a lot of time throwing the football to you because you wanted him to do that. And I don't ever, and of course I wasn't around all the time, so I don't know when he had to say no. But most any time I was around, if you wanted him to throw the ball, he was out there throwing the ball with you. And I think that that's kind of how they were raised too. If they had things they wanted to do, Grant didn't ever want to throw the ball. Kurt did.
Yeah.
And I went out and I threw the ball with him. I wasn't all that great at it even, but I did it because he wanted me to do it. And, Grant was really into music from his middle school years on, and I built a harpsichord for him.
That's special.
Yeah. And we bought your dad a drum set, his first drum set. Matter of fact, I sold the boat so that I could buy the harpsichord and the drum set. So
that's dedication to your kids, right there.
You'll find that you do things
priorities
like that.
Are different after a while.
You need to do those things for your kids.
Absolutely.
Yep.
My grandpa is one of the most amazing people that I've ever had the opportunity to spend time with, and from the fact of birth all the way to where I am now, my grandpa's always been there for me. He's had his ups and his downs, obviously, in his life, but he's always found the time to spend time with me and with my little brother as well, and he's just a real, true family man. He always puts his family first, and he puts his own wants and needs aside, and if there's anything I ever hope to complete in my life, it's emulating how he's lived his life, and I hope to do the same as well, too. So, Grandpa, thank you again for taking the time to stop by on the Dadpod. It means a lot to me. Well, thank you for joining me for the Dadpod. The show will be coming out now officially on Wednesday, so don't forget to tune in. If you like what you heard today, please share it with your friends, your family, and other dads that you might know as well. If you want to let me know your thoughts, send the Dadpod a Facebook message or email me at baxterc20@gmail.com. Fatherhood can be scary, but not when we have others to help along the way. Together, we can all experience what being a father is all about. Thanks for listening. Have a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time on the Dadpod.